collision damage photography. When we are called to do collision photography, and this is just a photograph from one of the classes I've taught on traffic collision photography, and these are some of the police officers in these major accident teams that are learning how to photograph the scene. They need to be photographed right away because things are going to change. They can change quickly. Roads need to be opened. If there's deceased individuals, of course, the coroner is going to be called. So a lot of things are going to be needing to be done and on a quick basis. So there's the diagramming, there's measuring of the positions of vehicles, there's measuring of tire marks on the roadway surface, and those things all need to be supplemented, of course, with our photographs. So we're going to have overview photographs, we're going to have mid-range photographs to show where more of the information, the detail, the tire marks, collision damage, broken parts that are on the roadway. We will be taking the same kinds of steps that we take with our other crime scene photographs. But another thing to keep in mind is taking photographs from the point of view of the driver, and even taking photographs from point of view of witnesses. If you have witnesses and they say, I saw it all, well, it might be a good idea to take a photograph from where it was they saw it all. It may turn out that they could not have seen what they thought they had seen, or it could help confirm. I've had cases, one was actually a traffic collision. Some guy goes roaring down the street, and there were people standing in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven, and he goes roaring by, and there's the traffic signal right there on the corner, and it's red, and he goes right into this intersection on red, T-bones a car and kills someone. Well, the defense wanted to say the light wasn't red. The witnesses said it was. That's good enough. But what was also nice was I took photographs from the positions that these witnesses were standing to show the intersection. Now, when you do that, of course, you need to use a normal lens, right? In fact, if you use, instead of the equivalent of 50 millimeters, you use the equivalent of about 35 millimeters. That gives a little more of the peripheral vision without making distances much further. So make sure that you're careful about your lens selection, your focal length selection. And fortunately now with our digital cameras, our focal length is recorded in the metadata file, so we can always check that. And these photographs are going to show the relationship of one vehicle to the other, where they are in relation to each other, but that's the resting positions. Now, sometimes you'll have the vehicles still engaged. Other times they careen off of each other. That's more likely, but you will be showing at least where these vehicles are in relationship to each other when you're there. We're going to photograph things on the roadway, such as broken glass, gouges in the road surface, scrub marks on curbs, damage to guardrails, utility poles, trees. All of that stuff is photographed. Tire marks on roadway surfaces. And when you do that, you need to take a photograph that shows the direction of the mark to show the direction the vehicle is traveling, and then a photograph from the side that shows the length of the tire mark. And of course, there will be measurements taken, but these are important photographs to take. By using a polarizing filter, if you have glare on the roadway, that'll help you to see the best detail for the length and the darkness of that tire mark. In this photograph you see on the screen, we can see that this vehicle traveled laterally or to the left here, because here is the tire and here is a tire mark on the roadway surface. And in fact, when we were setting this up for a class, they dropped the vehicle where the left tire was here, and then with the tow truck pushed it to create this mark. So we were recreating something that you could find at a collision scene. Additional things, if you are photographing a scene, it's often nice to take a photograph showing what the driver could have seen, especially if the driver's saying, well, I didn't see that, or there was an obstruction. It's not uncommon to have a big truck parked blocking a stop sign, the view of a stop sign. Or in this case, we have a stop sign that's weathered and you cannot even see it say stop on there. Of course, we all know that a red sign with this shape is a stop sign, but still it is a factor, something to be considered. Now, when it goes to court, we let the people there decide what they want to decide. But we need just to provide all the facts. Moving on, the interior of these vehicles, if there's anything in the interior that indicates body contact, such as hair and blood in this broken windshield, then we photograph those things as well. So here's a photograph of this strike point where it appears someone's head hit. And then when you look at detail, you can actually see hair and a little bit of blood in the broken glass. So when we have injuries or a fatal collision, we make sure we photograph the interior of the vehicle. If it shows any body contact. If the body is still in the vehicle, you're going to photograph the body from as many angles as you can get. We want to make sure we're using electronic flash when we're photographing in the interiors of vehicles. Sometimes you'll have a hit and run case. And of course, the goal is to photograph anything that would identify the suspect vehicle. And what happened is the transfer of the front license plate of the vehicle is right in here. And so, you know, there are things you can find, but with hit and runs, you're looking for any evidence that can identify the hit and run vehicle. You want to photograph paint transfer, height of damage. So we take photographs with a scale. Any pieces of a suspect's vehicle left at the scene, tire impressions, blood, that sort of thing. One of the places we have a lot of trouble photographing collision scenes is at night, because at night, if we're just using the electronic flash, it's going to give us a pool of light in the foreground and the background's going to stay dark. So this top photograph you see, that's a painting with light. And what's interesting is this vehicle comes down this dead end street, hits the curb. You can actually see where the wheel, one of the wheels hit here and another one here. And then it went airborne because you can't really see anything here. But see this right here, that big mark? That was the front bumper of the car, and then it flipped further. So someone was really traveling when they went off the end of this road. And this is all done with painting with light. So again, a good technique. This one on the bottom right, this was with ambient light. This is actually that truck that we saw the back of just a few minutes ago. So this was done at night with just the ambient light. So remember those techniques. Now, when you're photographing the damage on a vehicle, one of the first things to do is to try the basic 8 photographs. The basic 8s are from each end, each side, and each corner. That just kind of documents the vehicle. What you're going to want to do beyond that is to photograph in more detail any collision damage. Make sure that you use electronic flash, even if it's daylight. At the top left here, we see collision damage, but because of the shadowing, we can't see a lot of detail. The bottom right, this one with electronic flash, we can now see much better detail. If it's a smaller area, we take one photograph to show where the damage is, and then our close-up of the damage itself. Remember to use oblique lighting whenever necessary. And here we have some scales with nice big numbers that help us to see the scale in the finished photograph. If there's any damage to tires and wheels, those need to be photographed. Sometimes it'll show the condition of the tire before the collision. Sometimes it shows what happens after like a blowout. You might have dents in the rim. If the vehicle, one of the vehicles or both have modifications to the vehicle, sometimes that leads to a collision. So those things need to be documented and photographed. That includes tinted windows that may have obscured a driver's vision. Now, some items of evidence can be collected and photographed in more detail back in the laboratory. A piece of headlight on the left, top left here. This is a broken piece found at the scene. And here is what was left in the suspect vehicle on a hit and run. Here is a photograph of a filament in a headlight. And what does this tell us? Well, because the filament is pristine like this, then what this normally tells us is when the glass broke, when the headlight broke, the headlight was not on. If the headlight had been on, normally this would be all charred from the oxygen going in and all that. So that's something for the criminalist and trace evidence to determine. But here's a photograph. So this was a bit tricky to photograph because it was actually in a reflector. And so I put a white card in the reflector behind this element so that when I photographed it, you didn't have a reflection. So that's just a little bit about collision damage photography.